Good evening, everyone. Hell's Unicorn here once again. And this evening, I thought I might change the mood a little bit here. There's been a lot of anger and a lot of resentment towards the media, and I think it's time that we show our due respect to such darling and such upstanding figures in the media, such as the two I'm going to discuss tonight. And these two in particular are Sean Hannity and Cenk Uygur. One of these individuals has taken it upon himself to basically accuse Ron Paul of being a racist because of the aforementioned newsletters, which I've discussed in previous videos, going all the way back to 2007, actually, believe it or not, when I first started here. The other individual claims the same thing, but in a much more grievous fashion. And the reason why I say grievous is not because of what they said about Ron Paul, but because of the actual hypocrisy taking place here. Now, before we go any further, let me just tell you something. The accusations of Newt Gingrich of being a serial hypocrite, that is child's play compared to what I am going to get into right here. Now, everybody knows firsthand that Sean Hannity is a little bit dubious on the race issue. In fact, sometimes stuff kind of slips through his mouth that's a little bit awkward, but some would argue that it's not nearly as bad as the stuff that was in Ron Paul's aforementioned newsletter. However, what is interesting is that apparently Sean Hannity keeps interesting company. Now, if we assume, and I think we assume correctly, that Ron Paul is telling the truth and that he was not the one that wrote these articles, then what we have here is a guilt by association. Now, there's an issue of his responsibility and culpability for this being in the newsletter, and he has recanted and disowned these comments, saying they do not reflect his views. And for me, in all sense of fairness, that's sufficient. For others out there, that may not be sufficient. Fair enough, but look at the source of who's telling you to not accept this before you decide to close the issue. Apparently, Sean Hannity has a friend going back many years by the name of Hal Turner. And I've provided some very juicy links in the description. One going back to some footage that was first put up on YouTube in 2008 when Sean Hannity made a similarly hypocritical assertion of Obama being a closeted racist, which he may or may not be, based on his association with Reverend Wright. And one of his guests, who was a fellow from the new Black Panthers party, brought out the fact that Hannity had a similarly, if not more, ugly association with a white nationalist, in this case Hal Turner. Hal Turner had his own radio show, and he was known for saying very racially inflammatory stuff that would make what was in Ron Paul's newsletter sound very, very tame. I mean, the stuff in Ron Paul's newsletter, while I don't endorse any of these comments, they were more in sort of a tongue-in-cheek sort of fashion. To quote Hal Turner here, I don't believe that Ron Paul was saying, as Hal Turner said, that if whites had not colonized Africa, that the blacks in that country would be running around in loincloths fucking camels, which is a direct quote from Hal Turner. You can look it up in the link that I provided to the YouTube video. We have first-hand footage of him saying that on his internet radio show. Now, Sean Hannity did not immediately put himself forth as being forthcoming with this. He actually first denied knowing Hal Turner, which is an outright lie. Ron Paul could be accused of maybe having a little lapse in memory, or maybe said something that was misleading when he said he didn't know who wrote the newspaper. He may have said that he didn't recall who wrote it, and maybe he forgot at that particular point in time. But Sean Hannity, in the span of a single minute on his interview with this member of the Black Panther Party, first denied knowing the guy and then afterwards said he was banned from his show. So we can assume that apparently Hannity's memory is not as bad as we would like to believe if we would like to give him credence as a journalist, which I give him none. So I rate Sean Hannity as a second-class hypocrite because he did the exact same thing that he is accusing Ron Paul of doing. He is associated with somebody that has taken very racist viewpoints, and he actually outright lied about it and then later tried to backpedal. People are arguing that Ron Paul is doing the same thing. I don't think he is, but even so, what we're dealing with is a man living in a glass house throwing stones, aka Mr. Sean Hannity. Now on to Cenk Uygur. And this, my friends, is where it gets really interesting. It is one thing to accuse Ron Paul of being a racist because he associates with someone who has said some things that could be construed as racist, and actually be guilty of this yourself. It is another thing altogether when you say that somebody is a racist while you are actually flat out denying the fact that your country of origin actually murdered millions of people of one particular race in an act of genocide. What am I talking about here? I am talking about the well-known and infamous, although not universally recognized, Armenian Genocide of the early 20th century, originally perpetuated by the administration that ousted the Ottoman Sultan, aka the Young Turks. It's very interesting that Cenk Uygur's radio show is titled The Young Turks. This is to an Armenian what it would be if some German guy decided to start up his own little radio show and started calling it the Hitler Youth. That's how it comes off to people in the Armenian community, and they are right to be outraged by it. I'm going to read a little snippet from an article that was posted on the Armenian Weekly back in 2009, and for any who are not really aware of the history, this was around the time that Cenk was being considered for a primetime slot on MSNBC. He was since fired from that position because he is a shit journalist. He is uninspiring, he's uninteresting. Nobody wants to watch him unless they are suffering from a severe case of idiocy, which unfortunately on YouTube is a fairly common thing. As much as it pains me to say this, YouTube has an even greater collection of idiots than what watches the mainstream media nowadays, if we go by solid numbers in terms of viewership. I mean, that's terrible for me to say. I mean, I know I'm on YouTube. I depend on this place for my audience, and I think all of my subscribers are brilliant, and I know there are other people out there just as smart as them who may not be subscribed to my channel. However, when you have millions of people subscribed to a jackass like Fred, and you have hundreds of thousands of people literally subscribe to the dumbest person that I've heard of, the Amazing Atheist, and believe that he's some kind of political genius, I'm sorry, we're not dealing with Ivy League material here. But anyway, on to the article itself. I have a link to this in the description. This is from the Armenian Weekly, dated Thursday, February 26, 2009. And it goes, Dear Editor, MSNBC TV is thinking of filling their 10 p.m. slot with Cenk Uygur, currently of the Young Turks radio show. The Wikipedia entry for Uygur states that after cable news network MSNBC announced that it would replace re-airings of Countdown with Keith Olbermann with a new hour-long show, a grassroots campaign aimed at persuading MSNBC to choose Uygur as the host of that new show was launched. Uygur, a so-called progressive, vehemently denies the Armenian Genocide. He once proudly wrote that he challenged a professor at Columbia University to provide a single source that documented the genocide. According to Cenk, the professor was not able to do so. Now let me stop right there. Either Cenk is lying his ass off, or this professor should not have a position at Columbia University, because there is tons of documented evidence of this. Not only the testimony of displaced Armenians who now have been dispossessed of their original homeland, but also by independent sources in England, in Germany. I mean, almost everybody in Europe has recognized this as a genocide. And the only reason America has not recognized this as a genocide is because we want to keep nice with Turkey so we can keep these military bases in the Middle East, so we can keep fighting these wars in order to loot these countries and to control their politics. But anyway, continuing on with the article. A show called The Young Turks, hosted by Uygur, must never air on MSNBC or any station. I hope every Armenian will contact MSNBC to voice their outrage. Can you imagine a program hosted by someone who proudly calls his show The Nazis and who denies the Holocaust? And just for everybody's information, Sean Hannity's old buddy Hal Turner is also a Holocaust denier. But continuing, please call 212-664-4444 and write MSNBC 30 Rockefeller Plaza, New York, New York 10112, or email MSNBC and tell them no to Cenk Uygur and no to the Young Turks. Please, in memory of the 1.5 million Armenians murdered by the Young Turks, contact MSNBC and nip this thing in the bud. Sincerely, Anahid Jafarjian, Waldwick, New Jersey. And we have another article actually here. This one is on also on the Armenian Weekly. Let's see here. Just got to wait for the page to come up. Ah, yes. Okay, and this one's dated October 19th, 2010. The media unfairly bashes all Armenians because of alleged crimes of a few. This is good. If anybody ever tells you that Cenk disowned his previous comments about the Armenian genocide, you might want to doubt them on it, because just as recently as last year, we have another episode of him showing some very blanket racist tendencies. And this one goes. This was written by Harut Sasunian. I think that's how you pronounce it. The first problem with the widely circulated reports that several Armenians have defrauded Medicare out of millions of dollars is that these individuals are innocent until proven guilty. Only after a court establishes their guilt can they be labeled as crooks or criminals. It is even more outrageous that the good name of all Armenians is being trashed by sweeping media generalizations, bringing intense feelings of shame to millions of law-abiding Armenians who are overly sensitive about their reputation. Last week, sensational headlines referring to an Armenian crime syndicate or Armenian criminals completely traumatized the Armenian American community, exploiting the media hype. All sorts of racists, Armenian haters, and naturally some Turks have come out of the woodwork to post vicious anti-Armenian comments on various internet sites. One of the most insulting references to these arrests was made on the radio internet show called the Young Turks. As if the name of the show was not offensive enough to Armenians, the co-hosts, Anna Kasparian, an Armenian American, and the equivalent of an Uncle Tom in this category, I might add, and Cenk Uygur, a Turkish American, last week repeatedly bashed the accused as well as all Armenians. The fact that Kasparek is an Armenian makes her comments even more offensive. Trying to be funny or entertaining does not give her a license to hurl insults at individuals who have been merely accused but not convicted of any crimes, and the community at large for the alleged crimes of a few. Here are excerpts of the co-host's disgraceful remarks. Kasparian. Dozens of Armenians throughout the United States have recently got arrested for Medicare fraud. Now, this is an age-old trick of Armenians. This is what Armenians do, okay? And that's a gross generalization, and a large majority of these offenders live in Glendale, California. I am not kidding. That's a fact. Uygur responds, "That's literally true. Ha ha. By the way, I am amused by the Armenian community Medicare fraud in Glendale," imitating an Armenian accent while doing this, which I'm not good at doing, unfortunately. "You do medical fraud? Of course. Who doesn't do medical fraud? Come now. Is that close to an Armenian accent?" Kasparian responds, "It's close, so what these individuals would do is they would steal the identities of doctors, identities of hundreds of thousands of individuals in the United States, and they would make false claims. They would create these phantom healthcare clinics that don't even exist and then bill Medicare for treatments that never happened, and then Medicare would send this money to these fake doctors or these doctors that have their identities stolen." Uygur. Let me give you a little detail on how it works. It's kind of interesting. So they steal a list of doctors' names. Kasparian continues, "There is shame on two different sides here. Shame on the Armenians and shame on the government for not realizing it until now." Oh, maybe, government bureaucracies aren't always as efficient as some progressives like Cenk might argue. Until these Armenians stole $163 million from Medicare. The correct figure was actually $35 million, so Kasparian actually inflated the numbers by about 500%. Anyway, Uygur, you know what? This is a pretty good scam. You got to give it to them. They are working up in Glendale. Kasparian responds, and it wasn't just in Glendale. These Armenians throughout the country. Like we got Armenians in New York City. We've got them in California, a couple in Ohio, and some in New Mexico, some in Florida, all over the place. It's a massive operation. They're all connected. They all know what they're doing. It's insanity. In fact, officials equate this to the mafia. This is like the Armenian mafia operating in the U.S. Part of me felt like I should be a little proud of that because I am kind of a badass, but another part of me, of course, was humiliated. I feel so bad for the people that are victims of this because not only the government gets millions of dollars stolen from them, these are people who have had their identities stolen. So these Armenians can sit at home, drive their Rolls Royces, and not do anything. Uygur responds, I'm going to take a little controversial view on this. Obviously, they couldn't be more wrong. Busted, go to jail, etc. We are not having any of that conversation. On the other hand, it is a little ingenious. You know what happens. People get greedy. Once you got the scam going and you haven't got caught for a long time, you think, let's churn this thing out. Everyone wants a piece of the action. Next thing you know, everybody in Glendale knows, and they all want their cut in it. Of course, there is an ugly side to this. One of the guys I believe you saw in the picture was Vor. And Kasparian responds, by the way, Vor means ass. I'm wondering why all these news articles refer to him as Vor. Uygur says, the news article claims that Vor means thief-in-law, which is a bizarre thing. Now, that's the end of the quote. Violating all legal and journalistic norms, the co-hosts of the show never once used the word alleged or accused to describe the defendants. If the charges against some of these individuals are dropped, Kasparian and Uygur could be sued for libel. Unfortunately, they have not been, but they should be. Continuing. So far, tens of thousands of viewers have seen this particular episode on various internet sites. Thousands more have heard it on radio. Over 800 viewers have posted comments on YouTube alone. You can watch this show by clicking the link. Now, there is a note at the end. The video has since been removed from YouTube. My oh my, isn't that convenient? Doesn't that remind you guys of what Mitt Romney has allegedly done with all of his computer records from his past? Little hypocritical there, Cenk. You know, I mean, just to pile that on top of denying that 1.5 million people were murdered by a government that you named your show after. In conclusion, I would like to say this to all of you, my audience. Don't take my word for this. Visit the links, read the articles, come to your own conclusion, and then if you feel so inclined, spread this around, because everybody that watches Cenk's stupid show and everybody who listens to Sean Hannity's stupid radio show need to know about this. It took me a while to find out about this stuff. I found out about maybe a couple of months after Cenk launched his first attack against Ron Paul back in 2007. But a little bit of research can go a long way. If you dig deep enough, you can find that just about everybody in the journalism business has skeletons in their closet. And contrary to popular opinion, the media is not beyond criticism. Anybody who's a reporter who is either lying or otherwise distorting Ron Paul's record should be called out on this stuff if you can dig this stuff up. Don't be shy about fighting back. Well, anyway, that concludes this particular episode. With prudence to myself and benevolence to all of you, good evening.